Vladimir Putin hates us. He is malevolent. And he is as close to pure evil as I can find. He's also brilliant. And so I don't understand why any American would want an alliance with Russia. He's a killer.
Hard to see why he's a threat to us. And how many wars can we fight at once? How many people can we be in opposition to at once? Why not just accept it? People who are bad people share our interests and side with them.
You sound like Charles Lindbergh in 1938 saying Hitler hasn't attacked us.
I beg your pardon? Slow down. Hey, slow down, Colonel. I'm not in any way. You cannot compare me to someone who would make apologies for Hitler. And I don't think Putin is comparable to Hitler.
I think Putin is. Look,
I think it's a grotesque overstatement,
Putin, he assassinates dissidents and journalists. He bombs women and children on purpose in Syria. He is as bad as Hitler. And yet you want us to align with the Russians, with Iran, with Assad.
I want us to act in America's interest and stop making shallow, sweeping moral claims about countries we don't fully understand and then hope everything will be fine in the end. If a country we don't like takes active steps to kill people who are a threat to us, I'm going to pause and applaud.
Well, Peters is not alone in holding that view. You hear it all the time here in Washington. CNN analyst Robert Baer recently suggested anyone seeking collaboration with Russia on national security questions would have joined the Axis 75 years ago.
Clearly, the country that attacked us in the 2016 elections, you can't go into business with them. It is truly like, working with the Japanese after Pearl Harbor to, defend Hawaii, the air defense. It's just nutty.
Max Boot is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. He says he agrees with what Lieutenant Colonel Peters said last night, and he joins us tonight. Max, thanks a lot for coming on. Now, I think it's fair.
Me, Tucker.
I think it's fair to disagree about whether or not cooperating with Russia in the fight against ISIS is a good idea. But to dismiss anyone who doesn't share your view as a Nazi sympathizer seems cheap and a shortcut and not really befitting a self-described genius like yourself. Why would you say something like that?
Well, rest assured, Tucker, I'm not actually saying that you're a Nazi sympathizer. And the one thing that I would disagree with Colonel Peters about is I don't think that Putin is comparable to Adolf Hitler because there was only one Hitler. But what I do believe is that Mitt Romney was right. I was a foreign policy advisor on the Mitt Romney campaign in 2012 when he said that Putin is the #1 geopolitical threat that we face. I think that's true today. And I'm very disturbed, Tucker, when I see you at the top of the show, you and Mark Stein, yucking it up over the fact that Putin is interfering and meddling in our election process, undermining the sanctity of our elections to try to get Donald Trump elected, and that Donald Trump Jr., when he's told that Putin's government wants to support the Trump campaign, he doesn't pick up the phone to the FBI. He says, I love it. That, to me, is very disturbing. But what's even more disturbing is that you don't think it is disturbing.
Point by point here. First of all, I'm sorry that laughter disturbs you. And you can debate whether or not
this is not funny, Tucker. I'm sorry. This is an assault on our democracy.
I get your view there, Max. You can debate whether or not what he did is a crime or falls under the Espionage Act or not, but to dismiss people who disagree with you as immoral, which is your habit, isn't a useful form of debate. It's a kind of moral preening, and it's a little odd coming from you, who really has been consistently wrong in the most flagrant and flamboyant way for over a decade. And so you have to sort of wonder, like,
what have I been wrong about, Tucker? What have I been wrong about?
Having watched you carefully and known you for a long time, I recall vividly when you said that if we were to topple the governments of Afghanistan and Iraq, the region would be much safer, and the people who took their place would help us in the global war on terror. Of course, it didn't happen. I was there when you said that.
On me, Tucker.
I'm not getting holier than thou. I'm merely saying
you supported the invasion of
that
Iraq,
you have been consistently wrong, and many people have been wrong. I've been wrong about a ton of things, but you try to learn your lesson. But when you get out there in the New York Times and say, we really should have done more to depose Gaddafi because, Libya is going to be better when that happens. And then to hear you say we need to knock off the Assad regime and things will be better in Syria, you sort of wonder, like, well, maybe you should choose another profession, selling insurance, house painting, something you're good at. I guess that's kind of the point. Is there no sanction
Tucker,
for being as wrong as you
I would be happy. I would be happy to hold up my record of foreign policy prognostication against yours. And by the way, to underline the fact, you supported the Iraq War, and then when it went bad, you opposed it, which doesn't take any moral courage or perspicacity.
No, I actually began to oppose it when I went there, when it began, and saw that it wasn't working.
Right now, you are supporting Donald Trump, and you're laughing about the fact that Russia is interfering in our election process. That, to me, is immoral.
Okay, so let's have it's immoral. Not just a disagreement, it's immoral. You're a moral authority, a religious figure now, actually, casting moral aspersions on those who disagree.
Save your sarcasm, okay? What
no,
you're
it's heartfelt.
doing
it's not sarcasm. I have contempt
is a repudiation
for your
of all of the conservative movement in the Republican Party has stood for. When I was growing up, Ronald Reagan warned about the evil empire. Right now, you're yucking it up at the evil empire, interfering in our election.
It's a different empire, Max. And actually, we
can
debate to what extent
Vladimir Putin is a former KGB man, and you're applauding what he's doing.
Since you have some sinecure at the Council on Foreign Relations, let me ask you policy questions, if I can, just for 1 second.
It's not as lucrative as your sinecure at Fox News, Tucker.
Let me ask you a question. If we were to follow the course of action you're suggesting we follow, you're demanding we follow on moral grounds, having, as I said...
What course of action is that,
Which
Tucker?
is to get rid of the Assad regime, because you fear his presence will empower Iran, which you see as a major problem in the world. What would happen then? Who would run that country? I asked Ralph Peters that question last night. He said, the Kurds. Do you think the Kurds would run Syria once we depose Bashar al-Assad?
No, I don't. I think it'd be very difficult to do now in any case. I think it should have been done in 2011, 2012, when you would have had a free Syrian army, the moderate Syrians come to the fore.
What do you think we should do now?
What's your advice, Tucker? Should we collaborate with Russia in committing war crimes in Syria? Is that your advice in furthering Iranian hegemony over Syria, a country that is dedicated to death to America? Is that your advice at the moment?
Yeah. I think you're not choosing...
As you know, I was very opposed to the Obama policy, and I'm opposed to the Trump policy.
Yeah. Well,
but you seem to be a cheerleader for allowing the Russians and the Iranians to do whatever they want in Syria.
I'm a cheerleader for Russia and Iran. This is exactly the style of debate that prevents people from taking you seriously.
Am I wrong, Tucker?
Because rather than I'm cheerleading for Iran and Russia, it's a grotesque thing to say. Of course I'm not. I wouldn't live in either country. I disapprove of their policies.
You don't think that we should make common cause with Russia in Syria, as you've said repeatedly?
Let me ask
You're repudiating that viewpoint?
Let me ask you this, since you're, I think, also a historian. The Congress of the United States in 1941 voted for Lend-Lease, which sent billions and billions of dollars to Joseph Stalin in armaments and food because the Congress of the United States believed Hitler was a greater threat than Stalin. Were they Stalinists when they did that?
You know, Tucker, this is pure sophistry on your part.
It's not sophistry. It's a sincere question. Why don't you answer
it? Will you let me finish? Will you let me answer your question, Tucker? I will be the first to admit that sometimes you have to make common cause with repugnant regimes, and that's what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did with Joseph Stalin when you have common goals. But we do not share common goals with Russia. We do not share common goals with Russia because Russia is trying to further the murderous Bashar Assad regime. They are trying to further Iranian hegemony in Syria. That is not our goal. Iran believes in death to Israel. They believe in death to America. We should not be cooperating with them. We should not become complicit in Russian war crimes.
Okay, let me just ask you factual questions. And
Russia, by the way, is also undermining our electoral process, which you don't seem to care about, Tucker.
Okay, the moral preening and the generalizations are tiresome. Let me ask you a specific question. You say
your lack of moral judgment is tiresome to me. Your lack of moral judgment about what Russia is up to, I find to be offensive.
This is why nobody takes you seriously. But I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself by answering this question. You say
Tucker,
Iran is a primary threat to us.
You're the one who's not taken seriously.
Tell me how many Americans in the United States have been murdered by terrorists backed by Iran since 9/11.
Oh, so you're taking the pro-Iranian line, essentially. Is that right?
What about the fact that hundreds of American troops... You're humiliating yourself, Max. Why don't you answer the question?
Hundreds of American troops have been murdered in Iraq by Iran and its proxies. I also recall that in the 1980s, hundreds of American Marines were murdered in Beirut by Iran. Do you not care about those deaths, Tucker?
Do I not care about those deaths? It's almost impossible to have a conversation with you because your responses are so childish. Of course I care about the deaths. I'm trying to get to the right answer.
Your responses, Tucker, are ridiculous, okay?
I'm trying to get to what the best thing for the United States to do is. You're trying to argue a pro-Iranian line that we don't need to be worried about Iran? Is that what you're trying to say? Slow down. I'm not arguing a pro-Iranian line. I'm not pro-Iran. I'm not pro-Russia. And I'm certainly not arguing that Iran is a good place or doesn't pose a threat to the United States. I'm merely saying,
so what are you arguing, Tucker?
Let me tell you, in a world full of threats, you create a hierarchy of them. You decide which is the worst, and then you go down the list. And my only question to you is...
And Russia is right up there. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that Russia is a threat to us?
I think the idea that Russia is in the top 5 is absurd, and it makes me wonder about your judgment. But I'm giving you a chance to answer the question, which is...
It's absurd for you to say that Russia is not in the top 5. They're the only country that can destroy us with a nuclear strike.
I'm beginning to think that your judgment has been clouded by ideology. I don't fully understand where it's coming from, but I'll let our viewers decide.
Tucker, I think your judgment has been clouded by ratings because you feel compelled to be a spokesman for Donald Trump in order to win ratings on the Fox News channel.
That's pretty funny. I actually vehemently disagreed with our airstrikes, in Syria,
I think you're
and the president called for them, and I'm against them. I'm actually arguing principle, but more than anything, I'm arguing for the right to ask honest questions without being denounced as a quisling. But you are incapable of giving a factual answer, and so instead you attack the character of the person who asked the question. And I think our viewers can see that,
Tucker,
and it's beneath contempt.
I did not.
Max,
I did not attack
I gave you a chance, and you did not turn in in any sense, impressive performance. Thanks for joining us anyway. I thought it was interesting.